Very good. Can you hear me, ladies and gentlemen? At the back, can you hear me? Lovely jubbly. So this is truly a pleasure and an honor for me to be here this morning. And I believe that before I start my presentation, I have a public announcement to make. As of last night, to the best of my understanding, Microsoft is the first cloud service provider to have achieved MTCS certification for infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And we stand very proud to have achieved that certification, and by so doing, to demonstrate our commitment to what IDA, to what Singapore is achieving. I also want to publicly acknowledge Indy from ISC Singapore for helping us through this very challenging time frame. But we've made it, and we've made it on time. Thank you, Indy. Thank you to your team for that. Thank you. Right, back to business now. I would like to make a case over the next, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, about the need to go beyond secure cloud. I want to make a case for the need for trustworthy cloud instead. Of course, I'm going to talk about Microsoft, but the intention of my presentation here is not to advocate Microsoft or to sell Microsoft to you. I stand before you with my guts and my heart because I believe in the need for having a trustworthy cloud environment as being the right approach to guarantee, to establish trust between cloud users and cloud service providers. So let's go for it. First, let's have a state of the nation of what's happening and what's going to happen over the next 10 years or so. Let's look at 2025. 4.7 billion world internet users. 60% of the consumer electronics will be sold in emerging economies. 4 billion mobile internet subscription globally. And most of the data will move through or be stored in the cloud. Cloud is inevitable. Cloud is absolutely inevitable because of the very structure of human being, because who we are. If someone can hand over part of our business, we are only too happy to leave it to that person to do it, provided that there is some form of trust that that person will do a decent job. And we have numerous examples over the past centuries of very similar situations where, we handed over the job to someone else. And cloud makes so much sense that it is inevitable. Let's get into some market trends. And again, kind of a state of the nation. We have recently interviewed 12,000 different organizations. So 12,000 anonymized surveyed results. You can get that from Microsoft website. We can give you more details on the analytics behind this survey. Here is what we collected. Security trends for banking, and this is worldwide. This is not American specific. This is not Singapore specific. This is truly worldwide. So it incorporates emerging countries as well as the most sophisticated, the most emerged countries. Now, security trends for banking. 38% of the financial organizations do not have budgeted disaster recovery plans. And again, I'm not saying this is the case of Singapore. MAS is doing a fantastic job here. 37% of the financial organization do not use standardized/effective data classification. I'll come back to that. To me, this is a huge problem. 23% of financial organizations, only 23%, have adequate policies and practice for secure data disposal. So, state of the nation. Retail. 72% do not have disaster recovery plan. 51% do not have a plan for responding to security breaches. 31% do not use role-based access control. Okay. Healthcare. 51%, only 51% conduct system-wide data backups that are tested regularly. 31% have a disaster recovery program. 23% cannot prevent a power outage from affecting the organization. I hope you see that I'm trying to make a case for cloud here. I think it's reasonably obvious that I'm trying to make a case that if this is where you stand, perhaps you'd be better off considering a cloud solution, because some, if not all, of these concerns would be addressed. Okay. Government. 45% of public sector organizations do not use standardized/effective data classification. 40% still use paper NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and in a very inconsistent way. 33% do not have uniformly enforced security policies. State of the nation. And again, it's not specific to Singapore, far from it. Singapore is definitely at the top when it comes to the sophistication, understanding of all these matters. Adoption challenge. To be honest, before this presentation I had 5 slides under adoption challenge, and I thought, now it's going to put you into a bad mood, so let's just go straight into one of my pet projects. Oh, you have it. One of my pet projects, which is data classification. I have a very true concern for organizations who are even considering cybersecurity and considering cloud migration, for these organizations that do not have effective data classification. By effective data classification, I don't mean that you have a data classification policy that looks nice and sexy. I mean you use it. You use it on your daily basis, and you have a pretty good understanding out of your empire of data which data should be classified as high business impact, which one should be classified as medium, and which one should be classified as low business impact. Because organizations that do not have effective data classification should probably not even consider the cloud, because they don't even know what information they should safely put into the cloud, because they don't have any proper way, any yardstick to determine which information is clearly very confidential and very sensitive, potentially should be kept close to your heart, and which information is really public information. And frankly, it's a no-brainer to put it in the cloud. So data classification to me is a real roadblock. It's a true roadblock for organizations to really have a strong, decent cloud migration strategy. And this is a problem that I encounter many, many times. I have seen way too many organizations, private sector, public sector, who either would not have data classification, or who would have data classification as a nice book sitting somewhere in a bookshelf that nobody understands anything about. So this is a concern. Cloud. Our cloud approach. And again, this is a Microsoft stuff, but please let's forget about Microsoft for 5 seconds and let's have a discussion about what we believe should be a trustworthy cloud infrastructure. And by trustworthy, I mean a cloud infrastructure that people should trust, should consider using, because the cloud infrastructure, the cloud service provider has got these specific characteristics, attributes that it can display. And that goes way beyond pure security to me. We do believe that the element of a trustworthy cloud infrastructure are cybersecurity, data privacy, compliance, and transparency. And I strongly believe that each of these pillars are needed if we want to establish a trusted relationship between a cloud service provider and cloud users. Now let me get into the details. And of course, I'm going to talk about Microsoft, but please take what I say from a different perspective. Look at, does that resonate above and beyond what just Microsoft is doing? Cybersecurity, of course, I don't think that you should rely on any cloud service provider that would not be able to demonstrate that they have a decent cybersecurity standing. But one of the interesting questions, which I will try to address at the later stage, how do you evaluate what is a sound cybersecurity stance? What is a sound cybersecurity posture? Well, one element for sure is to determine whether the cloud service provider is eating their own dog food. Are they using the cloud themselves? I mean, are they using what the things they advocate, all the things they advocate to customers? At Microsoft, we currently have more than 1 million servers facing the internet, and they are all in the cloud. At Microsoft, all our low business, medium business impact information is in the cloud. In fact, the high business impact information, the very sensitive information, is also in the cloud as well, but just separated by 5 meters from the real cloud. So that is eating our own dog food, if you will. But above and beyond, cybersecurity is also a matter of having proper intelligence. Do you know what the bad guys are doing? Do you know the reality of malware? Do you know acceleration of some form of malware attacks? What do you know about the reality of this entire ecosystem? It is critical for a cloud service provider to be able to collect knowledge, to have intelligence on their own, so that they know exactly what's happening, or at least they've got a good understanding of what's happening, and they can prepare, they can ensure that the cloud solution that they put in place, the security surrounding the cloud solution, is adequate for the threats. And the threats are very dynamic, they evolve. Consequently, you need intelligence. Secure development practice. This is an interesting story from a Microsoft angle. And I'm not ashamed to say this. 12 years ago, Microsoft was a laughing stock when it comes to security. 12 years ago, Microsoft would release a piece of software, 48 hours later, that software would be hacked to death, because perhaps security was not a key topic for Microsoft. We learned our lesson. 12 years ago, we froze everything we were doing. For 6 months, nobody at Microsoft could write a single piece of code, because we took stock and we tried to understand what is it that we needed to do. One of the outcomes of that 12 years experience, 12 years maturity, is something called secure development life cycle. At the very moment, there is not a single piece of code, there is not a single piece of service, there is not a single piece of cloud within Microsoft that goes production level that has not been certified against our secure development life cycle. And that's a full life cycle that looks at all the aspects before you write a single piece of line, all the way to addressing patches, having key escrows, source escrow, and whatnot. This secure development life cycle, to me, is a pillar for proper cybersecurity defense. In fact, SDL has become an ISO standard. Microsoft has given SDL to everyone who wants it. That if you want to learn about secure development lifecycle, if you want to make sure that what you do uses the secure development lifecycle, you just go to Microsoft. We give you the theory, the tools for free. But ISO has also made that an official international standard. And I strongly advise not only you, but also I advise you to evaluate that the cloud service providers you are talking to can demonstrate that they've got this foundation of strong secure development. Combating criminals is another interesting aspect, and you will not see that into any cloud service provider, any other cloud service provider, because to the best of my knowledge, we are the only one to do that. We fight the cybercrime not by putting only antiviruses and intrusion detection. We fight it with law enforcement agencies. We try to find the command and control systems that are manipulating all these malware and all these computers infected by malware, and we try to mount some cases in front of tribunals so that we can officially take down these command and control servers all over the world. And we do that continuously. And also this provides fantastic intelligence to us. Since we take down these command and control servers, we learn about all these machines all over the world that have been infiltrated, impacted by this malware, because the malware call home on a daily, on a weekly basis. So we have the IP addresses, which means that if some of our customers, our cloud service customers, have malware in their computers, we've got this information from behind the scenes, so we can come back to them and say, well, it seems like these machines with IP address so and so and so and so have been infected with malware. So this is truly interesting as a way to provide added service, added security service to people using our cloud. But so that is the cybersecurity aspect. It is important, but it's not the only thing that is important. One of the interesting problems we have when it comes to security is that it is very difficult to measure. Is my security better than your security? Are we doing enough? Are we doing too much? Are we doing not enough? It's very difficult to measure. The way we collectively try to address that is by looking at standards, and by trying to identify which standards represent a proper yardstick, which standards are decent, and we try to comply with these standards. And Microsoft is not the only one. I mean, all the cloud service providers here are trying to do the same. Here I would like to pause and speak a little bit about IDA. IDA has come up with this MTCS, Multi-Tier Cloud Security Standard, which is a Singapore standard. The one I proudly announce we are certified against for our infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. Initially, I was very scared. I look after Asia for Microsoft, and Asia is many, many countries. I was very scared when I heard about this MTCS. I looked at it and I thought, oh no, here it comes. I'm going to have every country in Asia and then probably every country in Europe coming up with their own standards. And then they will impose Microsoft as well as all the other cloud service providers to be compliant with all these standards, each of them having a different flavor. I thought this is going to be a nightmare because this is not scalable, this is not sustainable. If I had only one data center, only one cloud service offering in one country, that would be it. But at Microsoft, here we announced that we have more than 20 data centers. In reality, over the last 4 months, we have announced 2 more data centers in Australia, 2 more data centers in Japan, and we have recently announced 1 more data center in Malaysia. So you can see that it's growing, it's exponentially growing. So I was very scared when I heard that. And then kudos to IDA. I had some discussion and then I realized that this is not at all what they were planning to do. They understood that in order for the country, in order for Singapore to embrace cloud, they needed to have an effective standard. Not with the intention of having this standard being a standard specific to Singapore, but with the intention to have this standard being merged into a more international standard, such as ISO. So in that angle, MTCS makes a lot of sense. I also understand that IDA is looking at building some profiles for some specific industries, an MTCS profile for healthcare, hopefully an MTCS profile for the finance industry, and I applaud to that. It makes a lot of sense, and that's setting up the scheme. And I only hope one thing is that the other countries in the region will look at what IDA is doing, will embrace MTCS, and not create their own standard, because that would be a real nightmare. But being compliant to the relevant standard is a yardstick, is a way for you to speak a language that will be understood between cloud service provider and cloud users. Not every standards are good. You have to identify which ones are worth the paper they are printed on, but definitely MTCS is SOC 1, SOC 2, ISO 27000. Also want to point to an emerging standard that we strongly believe in, and I'm going to talk about that in the next 5 minutes, ISO 27018, which is on privacy. This one to me is a critical one, and I can announce now that we are working to be certified against 27018 as soon as possible, because we strongly believe in that. I'm going to mention about that in the next few minutes. It's good to be compliant to standard, and if you are looking for a cloud service provider, any cloud service provider, of course you want evidence that this cloud service provider is compliant with so and so. That's very good. But is it backed up with contractual agreement? Do you have SLAs in your contract that really demonstrate this type of contractual binding that the cloud service provider is going to have with you? So you need to look into the contract. You need to find the things that will demonstrate that they really mean what they claim, and that they really eat their own dog food again. So the contractual commitment is a critical element in order to ensure that compliance is true and really is lively in this relationship between you and your cloud service provider. Then data privacy. Data privacy to me is a fascinating one, especially induced by the Snowden effect and so on. I mean, okay, you're telling me you're secure. I trust you. I mean, you have demonstrated that you have an understanding on cybersecurity. You're putting security in everything you do. You have intelligence. That's fine. You demonstrated that you are compliant with relevant standard, which means that a third party has identified and verified that you are doing the right thing. That's fine. How do you handle privacy? What is the risk that my data could end up being used by the same company or by another company for things that were not agreed upon initially? So privacy is to me a critical element in a trustworthy cloud. If you want to trust a cloud provider, no, not necessarily. If you want to trust a cloud provider, you have to determine whether privacy is meaningful to you, because you might have information for which you don't care about privacy. That's perfectly okay. Information that has very low business impact, okay, in that case it's no problem. But if you believe that some information carries some privacy attribute and needs to have that privacy to be respected, even if you move it into the cloud, then you need to have some assurance from the cloud service provider that they're going to respect your privacy attributes. And so you have to ask things like, okay, how about privacy? I mean, the simplest thing in the very near future will be, are you certified against the ISO 27018? That's good. But in the meantime, you can ask questions such as, okay, built-in privacy, advertising, are you going to reuse my information? And can you disclose in a transparent way who is accessing my information, under which condition, and to who you're going to provide my information? So going further, we have transparency and trust. These are the questions that you should always ask, and you should have crystal clear answer. Where is my data stored? Some cloud service provider, and I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad thing, some cloud service provider will say, I have no idea where your data is stored. What do you mean? No, well, you know, we use an algorithm that spreads information all over, so I don't know. For some it might be perfectly okay, for some it might be a concern. But so it's a question to ask. You also have the notion of data sovereignty. Some information, very few actually. In reality, we all speak about data sovereignty, but if you go down to the line of the legal framework or whatever, or the regulation, very few environments have a true data sovereignty. But still, you want to know in which country your data resides, and you want to apply some form of risk assessment against that to determine whether you have a risk or not. So, where is my data reside? Who accesses? And what is accessed out of my data? Can a system administrator have access to the content of my database? Or is it a big blob for them? Is it encrypted, not encrypted? If it's encrypted, who has the key? And which condition can the key be used? I mean, you need to know all that. You need clarity. How to get notified and what do we share? If there was an incident, how quickly are you going to tell me? What are you going to tell me? And if there is an incident not impacting me but impacting my neighbor, how quickly are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me? Clarity, clarity, clarity. Transparency in action. This is true Microsoft, very proud about this. We stand by the customer. You know, the Snowden, to me, the Snowden story, I see that as a curse and a fantastic blessing. It's a blessing because it has helped the entire community to crystallize their thought and to crystallize their stance. What do we stand for? What is important to us? Can we happily let spy agency to snoop, to sniff the information we have in our cloud? Or should we be against that? On the other hand, law enforcement agencies, sometimes they have a legal reason, a lawful reason to access information. Okay, how do we stand? What do we do? First answer, transparency. First answer, we have to disclose to everyone, okay, these are the rules of engagement, this is our DNA, this is the way we work, and we have to make it very clear. Second, we have to fight. And you probably know that at Microsoft we are currently into some legal dispute against the American government because they want to access some information that belongs to a person who is not American. The information is located in our data center in Ireland. And the US government, perhaps for good reason or not, I'm not here to dispute that, but says we want to have this information, we have the right to have this information. Microsoft says no. The guy is not American, the data is not in USA, you don't have any right. And so we are fighting. But this needs to take place, and a lot of cloud service providers are with us on that and fighting with us. Some are looking at us and wondering what's going to happen, but taking action. Still, transparency. Microsoft and others, we publish on a quarterly basis transparent information about which government asked for which information. So, and in fact, it's always about customer information, never about corporate information, but we transparently disclose. In this country, we have received that many requests from law enforcement agency to have access to information located in our data center, and here is what we have done, here is in which case we have said flatly no, here is in which case we have told the law enforcement agency to ask the guy directly, and here is in which case we have provided the information because we were instructed to do so by the tribunal. So, You can collect this information from Microsoft, and others are doing the same as well. This is my last slide, so I hope I'm making a point, I hope I'm making a case that we have to go above and beyond just providing a secure cloud if we want to induce a trusted relationship between cloud service providers and potential cloud users. There is a need to build a trustworthy environment so that we can really create this dynamism and accelerate the acceptance of cloud in everything we do. So with this, Indy, you want to give me something? All a good man.
Since you made,
Lovely.
Pierre, since you made the announcement at the beginning that you were certified, I brought along the certificate. I have Mr. Yan Lee from IDA as a witness, and I'm pleased to certify the Azure services and Office 365 and make Microsoft the world's first infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and of course software as a service provider to get the MTCS cloud security certification.
Very good. Thank you. Indy, thank you very much. Inyang. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you very much, Colonel, for the very informative session.